Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer. Welcome to Lost in the Wasteland, my weekly interview show where I get a chance to talk to somebody about their perspective on movies. And this time we have a first timer coming on, Sam here, one of my fellow SiftPop writers. Sam, thanks for coming on the show.
Happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me. I love it.
And I guess before we hop into things, if you'd like to plug anything else besides your new gig, writing with SiftPop.
Yeah, I have just started writing with SiftPop. I've done a few of the best ever challenges. I just had my first review posted on there for Father Stew, the Mark Wahlberg movie. It was a good time. I was the only person in the theater, but that's probably because it was a Wednesday. So no shame in that. I did enjoy it. I have my own blog where I've been posting reviews for about 2 years, going back to mid to late 2020, called cinematicsam.com. My reviews are very informal. I try to have a certain amount of actual quality and then humor. Maybe one day I'll have a podcast. Maybe one day I'll have a YouTube channel, but I'm boring, so it's all good.
Hey, we all start somewhere and do our thing. And I know I started just with this YouTube channel and it took me like 5 years or 4 years to get like 100 subscribers. It's definitely snowballed recently. But we do our thing. We get to talk about movies, and I'll definitely include the information for your blog and the info in the description in the video, so you all can go check it out. I also saw Father Stew. I got to check it out on Sunday, and there's 4 people in the theater, including myself and my fiance. So
hey, there we go. That's a 400% increase. Those are good numbers for them.
There you go. What bothered me was I got my tickets like on Thursday because I always plan out my weekend beforehand. And I come in and this older couple are literally in the seats right behind us.
Oh, man,
I'm like,
that.
You literally had the whole entire theater to choose from and you sat right behind us.
I get it if it's like 50% full, but like at the same time, if they're a little bit older, it makes me think, is there a possibility they just didn't really know what they were picking and just grabbed one? But if it's totally full or if it's mostly full, I kind of get it. Yeah. But in those situations, I'm usually like, honey, let's move like 3 rows forward and then let's just not talk about it.
It's like literally the only people in the theater.
Yeah.
So, but you would think that things would get better with reserved seating, but then people still do stupid stuff in the theater. See, this is all the fun things we missed when we didn't go to the movie theaters during like the height of COVID. So
I remember right when they started opening theaters again, the first movie they had back was Tenet. I went by myself and I was thinking that because I went to Harkins theaters because I live in Arizona.
Okay.
And I was thinking, okay, they're going to be super strict about this because they're going to want to keep their business. Nope, right away, nobody gives a crap about wearing masks, about making sure everybody had hand sanitizer. There was a manager who walked in at the beginning, was like, please be careful, like, but keep your masks on. As soon as he walked out, everything went out the window. And I was like, we're going to be here a while, aren't we? Like, nothing good's going to come out for a couple of years, is it? So that was something. But at least Tenet was all right. Yeah.
Since then, which is interesting because I got a chance to go out to Phoenix for work in 2018. And I had a conference in Chandler, Arizona. And I went to the Harkins right there near the hotel that I was at. What the hell did I see? I saw an Emilio Estevez directed The Public, which was about like a group of homeless people like having a sit-in a public library. But like, I like the Harkin Theater. And honestly, it was the most staffed theater I think I've ever been in.
Oh, they're incredibly well staffed and they have good training and the managers are usually on top of stuff. But at the same time, they have the right amount of apathy. So I used to walk in after my Chick-fil-A shifts in high school and I'd have my bag of food from the end of the shift and nobody would care. So they got just the right amount of apathy.
There you go. Yeah, because you walk into AMC in New Jersey and it's just like, there's 2 people here. So, but there you go.
That would be awful.
But without further ado, it's time to jump into our questions. And this first question is everybody's favorite question to answer. What's your favorite film?
This is actually my least favorite question to answer. So
And I said that very sarcastically.
Oh, I could tell, but
So
I
there
can't
you go.
respond to sarcasm. All my friends tease me for not really being able to respond to sarcasm properly.
Mhm.
I have like a plethora. It kind of depends on the mood. Like
Yeah.
I would probably say the go-to favorite movie is Catch Me If You Can, the Steven Spielberg movie from '02 with DiCaprio and Tom Hanks. I just think it's a very unique blend and the right time to catch DiCaprio because it's right at the beginning of his fame and right at the beginning of his prime. And Hanks has kind of been in his prime since like the early 90s. So he's functioning very well. They have a unique banter together when they're both on screen. The supporting cast is surprisingly deep because you have a young Amy Adams. I can't remember the name of the actress who plays Meredith Grey, but Meredith Grey is there for like 30 seconds before she's just skyrocketed to fame in her huge deal. Hang on, what is her name? I'm pulling it up. Oh, Ellen Pompeo. There it is. So she's there for a few seconds. Martin Sheen's there, and Christopher Walken is actually giving a pretty strong performance as Frank Abagnale Sr. And considering the interesting real life story of Frank Abagnale Jr., I think it makes for a really good story overall. And depending on mood, I'll go with other movies too if I feel like it. But usually, if I'm just going to throw something in, I pick something absolutely terrible just because it's fun to watch. And garbage is more interesting to me sometimes than actual quality.
But yeah, Catch Me If You Can is a great choice. Those opening credits and the score, it just sets you in such a great mood. And yes, it's one of the last, I think, really great Walken performances. Because like since 2000, there's not a whole lot of them. But like Leo's fantastic. And I love Tom Hanks. He's so cranky in that movie. And like his opening scene where he I think he drops the F word or something. And he's just like, whoa, this isn't Tom Hanks, is it? And just sets you up for that.
There's only been 2 movies that I've seen where I actually thought, this isn't the Tom Hanks I know and love. Like usually he's a very fatherly type figure in movies, or he's fun and playful. And then there's this, and then there's a movie that came out in like 2017 called The Circle. That terrible movie with Emma Watson and the kid from Boyhood. I never remember that guy's name either, but those 2 are in it, and that movie is just awful. But that's the only other movie I've also heard Tom Hanks drop an F-bomb in, because right at the end, this whole company gets exposed and he looks over it and his business partner is like, we are so effed. And he then takes a huge sip of coffee, and then the movie just cuts to black.
Yep. Oh, I remember The Circle. Prefer
not fondly, I imagine.
No, I do want to read the book. I heard good things about the book. Movie, not great. But Sam, what's your earliest memory of going to the movies?
I'd probably say, so I lived in Peoria, Illinois when I was really young. And those are where my formative memories come from, when I was very young, probably about like 3 to 4 years old. I remember probably late 2002, so I was probably 6, going to see Monsters, Inc. in the theaters with my uncle. I remember I went like 3 times. That's the first movie I remember going to see multiple times at the same theater. Before that, I don't really have a ton of memories of going to movies. I know I'd gone before. I know I've seen movies before, but that's like my very first one. And it's a pretty good memory to have as the starting block.
Absolutely. It's still one of my favorite animated films of all time. It's my favorite Pixar. And
oh, really?
Yeah, for me personally, I just love Monsters, Inc. so much. I am such a huge John Goodman fan, and Sully is so great. And and Billy Crystal's fantastic. Like the whole entire cast is great. And then Boo is just adorable. And so imaginative too. So interesting. And one of my other favorite animated films of all time, Shrek. So 2001 Oscars was a very interesting time.
I think that was a little before I started watching the Oscars, being 6 and everything. But I imagine the horse race between Shrek and Monsters Inc. had to have been pretty tight.
Yeah, and then you had Jimmy Neutron too, and I don't think they had any chance of winning.
Oh,
So
Jimmy Neutron, underrated classic. The TV show, the movie I think is a little overrated, a little bit. I still think it's fun, but in the TV show, they really actually let those characters loose, and they kind of just get away with whatever they want. And they get as close as they can sometimes to like being a TV show for adults, but really it's still for kids. But if you go back and rewatch some of that, you'll notice there were a lot of more adult-centered jokes when it came to Jimmy's dad.
Yep, 100%. I'm a huge fan of the show. So, now, Sam, do you have a particular favorite genre of movies?
I would say no. I kind of am a whatever is on, I will watch. Whatever is coming out, I'll watch. I think I have anti-genres that I kind of avoid for the most part. Not of recent year, because now I kind of just see everything. But
yeah,
for a while I kind of avoided romantic comedies just because I thought it was kind of boring and very formulaic, and in the same way horror movies. But it's odd now because I'd say horror movies, while they can be the most predictable, there is the most room for variance in terms of setup and plot and what's going to happen in the story. Like one night you may see Halloween Ends or Halloween Kills, and you can see everything coming from a mile away, and it's all been set up so you can tell exactly what's going to happen. But there's going to be dumb horror thrills in there, and it's going to be fun. And then the next night you might see Hereditary, and you might be sitting in your seat terrified, thinking about family sins passed on and like family burdens passed on from one generation to another, and about the demon god payment or something. So it's very interesting to go through them, because you never know what you're going to get. And even if a horror movie's bad, it's often still a good time, because the violence of it can definitely make it enjoyable. And maybe that means I'm more susceptible to violence from Grand Theft, from like they used to say about Grand Theft Auto as well. But
it's Grand Theft Auto's fault. 100%.
100%. That's exactly why I am who I am. Grand Theft Auto 5.
You know what's it's interesting, because like that is very true about horror films, because like, yes, I was even thinking about Hereditary. Like Hereditary is like top tier horror of recent years, and then you have stuff like The Bye-Bye Man, and I was laughing within the first scene of the movie because the acting was so bad. I'm just like, oh my god, this is going to be a long ride.
I actually didn't see that one. Do you think they meant to keep it in the script as The Bye-Bye Man, or do you think they just got to shooting and they ran it and they were like, crap, we haven't formed an idea for what to call this guy yet, so I guess we're just leaving it. Hopefully no one will think we're stupid.
All I remember is those commercials like, Bye-Bye Man. I'm just like, oh my god, this looks terrible. And it You're just like, this is stupid. Goodbye.
I already know this is not going to be good, so I'm going to take a hard pass. So if it's on VOD, maybe I'll check it out later.
Definitely wait for streaming when you can get it for free. Now, in terms of filmmakers, do you have any particular favorites?
I would say I kind of have been attracted to Robert Eggers of late. I think he's done a lot of good stuff with horror. Again, going back to The Witch, or Witch, whatever it's called. I call it The Witch just because it's funny to say. But that was kind of Anya Taylor-Joy's like kickoff point as a star. So he helped her find her footing. And then he had The Lighthouse. And that was honestly one of the most underrated movies of 2019. I understand why I didn't get any kind of real awards buzz at stuff like the Oscars, but at the same time, I was like, you guys are promoting some stuff in here that I definitely think this is better than. So we could have been doing something else. And then The Northman's coming out this year, so I'm excited about that. Otherwise, I really will watch just about anything. I think I'm slowly trying to go through all the old stuff of Spielberg, like from before his career really kicked off. So stuff like in the like 1970s stuff, like before Jaws. I have like a collector's like set of movies from the prime of his career, so I'm still going through those.
I literally just bought one.
Ooh,
which is funny because I'm literally starting this week my whole deep dive into Spielberg, starting with one of his short films, Amblin, which got the name for his production studio from, and then his TV movies that led up to him doing Jaws. So next couple weeks going to be some interesting hidden gems of Spielberg. But Spielberg is one of the all-time greats, and I love Robert Eggers. And I was just reading something because I literally just rewatched The Witch on Sunday, so it's fresh in my mind. And I got to go to a press screening of The Northman last week. And by the time this drops, it'll already have come out. And it is everything I wanted it to be. But I was reading this thing where Anya Taylor-Joy wanted so badly to be in the Lighthouse. She's like, I'll play the mermaid.
I remember that. I saw that article. That was interesting.
And Robert Eggers like, I don't want you to be playing this particular mermaid. And then she's like, I'll be a seagull. I'll just be background. I would have lost it if Robert Pattinson was hallucinating and one of the seagulls started talking. It was Anya Taylor-Joy.
Oh, that would have been hilarious if all of a sudden
it would have been up
the
there
racist character from like the racist character from New Mutants starts talking from like a seagull's head.
It's basically like that would have been up there in terms of laughs with all the ridiculous amount of farting.
Oh, absolutely. I can't believe. So here's my other side of that with the Lighthouse was as I saw it, because I think Joker had come out a few weeks beforehand, like not long before Joker had. And the whole point of Joker is like, look at this guy's descent into madness and like the society that we live in this terrible place that he had to grow. And I was like, if you guys wanted a better character story, you could have just given this movie you could have let Robert Eggers do this and then still had Joaquin Phoenix. I mean, he made a better Joker movie with the guy who played Batman and the Green Goblin. So
yeah, there you go. Well, that's because they certainly dissolved in the madness very deeply.
100%. Those guys went nuts. It's the funny thing though about horror movies, and it's interesting that you mentioned Jaws because one of my wife's very favorite movies is Jaws, but she can't watch any horror movie at all, or she'll have nightmares and she just can't do it. So she loves watching Jaws and we've watched it together. But I remember early on in our relationship, I took her to see Annihilation.
Oh my.
The Alex Garland movie. And as we're sitting there during the bear scene where this bear is like screaming with a dead lady's voice, I'm like, wow, this is very interesting. Great filmmaking, creative choice. And then I look down and my then girlfriend, now wife, is like buried in my chest and like won't look up. It's just waiting for it to end. And I don't think I picked a movie for like the next month or so when we were going out.
That was an experience. I love Annihilation, but like that scene with that bear is horrifying. And I'm like, oh, I don't like this.
I've gone back and I've rewatched that scene specifically on YouTube a couple of times, and it's definitely terrifying just because of how violent the death in that scene is, and just how it is just as scary every time with the odd like bear growl mixed with the death scream from the doctor who had walked away and got killed by the bear.
Yep. Nope. All kinds of nope.
All kinds of nope.
Like Nope coming out this year. Now, we talked a little bit about some filmmakers, some genres, but how about who are some of your favorite actors or actresses?
It's funny that you mentioned Nope, because actually I think Daniel Kaluuya is the best working actor currently. I think he can do almost anything. I haven't seen him in a straight up comedy yet, but everybody should have known that dude was great from Black Mirror on.
Yes.
I've only seen that first season of Black Mirror. I keep meaning to go back and watch the rest of it, but he is terrific in that. And then he's amazing in Get Out. And I saw Queen and Slim, I saw Queen and Slim when it came out, and that kind of got overlooked because it was during Oscar season and whatnot. And I don't think it quite had the awards push that it needed to really get some notoriety, but that was a really great movie. There was something else I saw. Oh, Judas and the Black Messiah.
Yep.
It was one of the very best movies of 2021. I understand why they put him in supporting role, but I have no idea why Keith Stanfield was in a supporting role. I think they just had no reason to put him there. They just decided, yeah, this is the best we can do. So here you go, man.
I legitimately was sitting listening to the Oscar announcements thinking they made a mistake. Like, yeah. I legitimately thought that was a mistake. I'm like, there's no way they could both be best supporting actors. Like, that's ridiculous. And then it was true. I'm like, what?
It's kind of similar to Silence of the Lambs in that respect, because is Anthony Hopkins the best part of that movie? Yeah. But at the same time, he's only on screen for like 10 minutes. He can't be the lead. He can't be lead actor with 10 minutes.
Because, like, I know you could define it in many different ways, because you could have run, like, actual screen time. And if you think about it from a narrative standpoint, if they're one of the central characters of the narrative, and he's neither. No. Like, he's not the leading man in the movie. Like, he's not even the one she's hunting. He's just the one helping her out. And he's in it for, like, I think if they clocked it in, it was like 15 minutes of screen time. It's just like, that makes no sense. But
it didn't click for me for him to be getting that award, but it was Anthony Hopkins. I actually remember last year when he won for The Father. He's great in The Father. I still think they kind of robbed Chadwick Boseman, but even more, I think they kind of robbed Riz Ahmed for The Sound of Metal. But
that was a great performance.
I remember I was watching it, like, it was like a family reunion at the time. So all my mom's side of the family was in town, and I was the only other person who was really paying attention was my aunt. Mm-hmm. And I kind of cut loose because it was the last award. I was like, all right, they're going to give it to Chadwick. It's going to be good because he passed. It's a good decision. And they say, and Anthony Hopkins. And I just slipped up and like dropped the F-bomb right in front of my aunt. And I was like, you got to be kidding. She's like, Sam, what's the matter? He's great. I'm like, yeah, but Chadwick Boseman was better. Come on.
And just the whole awkwardness that happened afterwards on top of it.
Yeah.
I felt bad for Joaquin Phoenix.
Poor Anthony Hopkins. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I felt bad for Joaquin Phoenix standing up there being like,
is he here?
What do I do? And then Questlove basically being Porky Pig, being like, that's all, folks. And like, cut away.
And like, we're out.
Yep. It's like, well, that was awkward. Goodbye.
It's basically every other year at this point that something bad's going to happen at the Oscars, where 2021 you have that. And then this last year, obviously the Will Smith, Chris Rock slapping, the slappening. And I think the only recent year where it really didn't go off without a hitch is the 2021 with Parasite taking a lot of awards. I definitely think I was really happy that happened. I don't think anything really bad happened during that awards.
No, and that was great. Like, and Bong Joon-ho stole the show. Him having his Oscars, making out with each other, and then talking about how drunk he was going to get that night.
That was just a fun nice little speech he gave for Scorsese was fun too. I was glad he gave him that recognition, and I was glad Scorsese just took the applause well, and he threw out a shout out to Tarantino. So it was probably the last great thing that happened in society before COVID hit. So
fair. And then it all went downhill from there.
I mean, I'm a basketball fan and I'm a LeBron fan. So he had like 2 big wins and then the NBA season shut down. And I was happy about that. But at the same time, like, not everybody loves the NBA. So that's just me.
Yeah, I'm a big baseball fan, and getting like a 2-month season was so weird. So weird.
It seems like it's only gotten better for the MLB.
Almost didn't have a season because they're a bunch of assholes. So there we go. Well, at least they actually are having a season, and we'll see where it goes. But now everyone's just like, get rid of the umpires. We want robots. I'm like,
I mean, as soon as you do that, it just opens up a precedent for every single sport just to have robots instead of umpires. But
then we get Terminator and Skynet, and then we're all done. So let's start that snowball rolling.
Let's get it rolling. Let's have the MLB be the turning point for the apocalypse. I'm down.
Yep. Now for something completely different. So what's a film that you feel like you literally just watch every day?
Uh, I was going to make a joke because my day job is I'm a supervisor for the Geico claims department. So I was going to make a joke and say Crash, even though I've never seen Crash. So I have no idea how that movie goes. But in an odd way, I think something I go back to almost daily is there's a couple of scenes in Whiplash that I always like watching. And there's a couple of scenes from Moonlight as well that I find very moving. And it's odd. It's like that 2014 to like 2017, 2018 range of movies. That was right when I was at the end of high school and into college. And those are kind of some more formative films. So I'm trying to think if there is a main one that I will just go back to every day. And honestly, I'm more of a down for new experiences kind of guy.
That's
so
fair.
I'm more than willing to rewatch something. I think I rewatch It's a Wonderful Life at Christmas every year, but I think a lot of people do that. The other Princess Bride definitely is one that I see all the time because it's always a go-to. Everybody in the family can watch it. There's something good that you didn't catch about it the last time. And it's always funny. And then the fact that they found a way to make it this endearing for this long, almost 40 years later at this point, is pretty impressive.
Yeah, geez, it is almost 40 years later. Oh, I love The Princess Bride so much. My soon-to-be wife, my fiance, every Valentine's Day we each pick one of our favorite romances and we watch it. And I just picked Princess Bride for like 3 straight years because why not? Because
that's amazing. A good tradition. That sounds awesome. I might have to bring that up to my wife. Maybe we'll do that for our anniversary. But we don't really have set movies we go back to every time. But that sounds like a good idea. I'm gonna copy that.
This year was the first year we shook it up. Because I wound up picking Brooklyn this year.
Oh, that's such a good movie.
I love Brooklyn. And Jess, my fiance, always picked Forgetting Sarah Marshall. And this year I picked Brooklyn and then she picked The Princess Bride. I'm like, well, I guess we're going to keep watching The Princess Bride.
Did you see, you mentioned Sarah Marshall. Did you see Jason Segel in that new Netflix movie, Windfall?
Yes, I did.
I really liked that. I was pretty impressed by his performance in that. It was a big departure from what I usually think of him as the only likable character in How I Met Your Mother. If you like, not to deep dive into the weeds too much, but if you think about that cast, I think they're all terrible people except for Marshall. He might be the only good person there.
Oh, I love Jason Segel, and I've watched Forgetting Sarah Marshall so many times at this point I could just quote from top to bottom. But he was great in Windfall, and it's interesting seeing him in Winning Time, the Lakers show on HBO Max, because he's the assistant coach to Tracy Letts' character. And the most recent episode, Jason Segel got to let loose a little bit, and I'm like, oh my god, it was a lot of fun.
That show is terrific. I'm really excited about it. I'm actually, spoiler, I get to post about that on SiftPop when it comes out.
Nice.
Like decided when it came pitching time for what reviews to get, I was like, I mean, I could throw all my weight behind Top Gun 2, and then probably more senior writers are going to get it anyway, so screw it. I'm just going to throw all my weight behind Winning Time because I know so much about the NBA from that era. The interesting part about the show to me, there's a couple of things. The first is the guy who plays Magic Johnson really embodies the awkwardness and the charm of Magic Johnson, because I've never found him to be that interesting or that cool of a person, but he just seems like a great guy and just like he'd be fun to be around. And then the guy who plays Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I can't remember the actor's name off the top of my head, but he is stealing every scene he's in, because Kareem was notorious for being just an absolute zero in terms of personality 90% of the time. He's a very profound writer. He's a very intelligent man, and he's written some amazing think pieces, especially in recent years with the killing of George Floyd. He spoke about that. He He wrote about some of the recent civil rights movements and very profound stuff. But when he was a player, he was notorious for nobody wanted to talk to him because he was very, very low key. And they actually captured that in one of the episodes where he hits the game winner after Magic throws in the pass. They basically captured the true story perfectly, where Magic hugs him and like starts choking him because he's hugging him. And Kareem shoves him off and is like, "Rookie, get off me. We have to do this 81 more times."
Yeah. Well, and I love the show so much, and just watching John C. Reilly in the state that he's, oh my God, just the look that he has with like the open shirts, like the chest hair out, just like, oh my God. And it's interesting because I know Will Ferrell wanted that role, and like Adam McKay picked John C. Reilly over him, which apparently kind of pushed their relationship away. But it's definitely worth checking out. So if you haven't checked out Winning Time, do it.
Absolutely.
Now,
definitely.
Sam,
and then read my review of it later.
Yep. And check out Sam's review of it. Now, what's a film that you connect with because it relates to another interest of yours?
What we bring up Winning Time is funny because that's definitely something basketball, big time NBA fan. I always go back to basketball movies because I really enjoy seeing how they shoot the scenes, how they use the cinematography of it, because basketball is a very fluid sport. You mentioned you like baseball. I've always found that baseball is kind of like the horror movie of sports because you're waiting, and then something incredible happens. Yeah. And I think in an odd way, basketball is perfect for an action movie because there's just stuff happening constantly. Yeah. And there's so much motion. It's a Disney movie, so I can't give it full props, but I've always really liked Glory Road just because the story of the 1964 Texas Western college basketball team, now University of Texas, El Paso, was the first school to start all 5 Black players and win the national championship in college basketball. And I think it's a very interestingly shot movie because they have a lot of unique angles and they use a lot of slow-mo, particularly the final scene and the final game between Kentucky and Texas Western is a very interesting game to watch. And they actually still have some footage of that game online on YouTube. It's grainy black and white. But one of the interesting scenes is right at the very beginning. The coach, who's played by, I think it's Jerry Lucas.
Lucas.
Josh Lucas. That's who it is. Jerry Lucas is someone else. I don't know who that is. I should probably find out. But Josh Lucas tells one of his better players, very first play, I just want you to dunk on their best player as hard as you can. I don't care if you get called for a foul, just embarrass him. And he does it in the movie. And so then I looked it up, and you can still find footage of that very play happening online from the 1960s. And it's almost more violent on the grainy 1960s footage because he just rises up and humiliates poor Pat Riley. We mentioned again Winning Time, but Pat Riley was on that Kentucky team and got dunked on right away.
Now I'm just imagining Adrian Brody getting a basketball like slammed in his face.
Oh, for Adrian Brody is probably the most interesting casting of the Winning Time show, just because Pat Riley is kind of notorious for being the smoothest guy you've ever met, and that is not what I think when I think of Adrian Brody.
Honestly, for me now, it's basically I just think of Wes Anderson movies, but I'm at that point with Adrian Brody. But who's a movie character you feel like you connect with on a personal level?
That's a good one. There's so many characters where I really think I've kind of gleaned something from them. I think probably the character that I've kind of felt like I've grown with and kind of matured with over time. I mean, I kind of grew up in the Avengers MCU era, and I think I could sometimes relate to Captain America and the struggle of like growing up and like having idealistic thoughts of what the world ought to be like, and then getting older and realizing it's a lot more gray than black and white. But I'm not a superhero, so take that one with a huge grain of salt. because I have not taken steroids, and I am not Chris Evans level handsome. So I don't know. I can't think of somebody right off the top of my head. I mean, TV show wise, I've always kind of admired in a weird way Jimmy McGill / Saul Goodman from Better Call Saul, just because of the unique struggle that guy finds himself in, and the constant need to prove yourself, but at the same time trying not to compromise who you are, trying to overcome stuff you've done in the past, but maybe realizing you can't outrun it. The new season premiering yesterday was what I was looking forward to all week, and the whole weekend before that. So I'm excited that show's back, and I can only think about where it's going to go once it's all over with, and I'm really excited for that.
I literally just watched the first episode before this, and I'm going to be watching the second episode after we're done recording.
It's the second episode has a nice surprise. I'm not going to say any more than that, but the second episode's got a real nice surprise appearance.
This is why I pay for AMC Plus.
I've heard that the quality of the video there is kind of bad though. Is the picture quality okay? Because I kept seeing on Reddit yesterday, people were like, I can't see anything here. Like, is this bad for everyone or something?
No, to be frank, and I don't like to shit talk a whole lot of things on here, but if I had to pick the award for worst streaming service, it's 100% AMC Plus. It is the actual layout is terrible. It's clunky. It doesn't work a third of the time. And I'm just like, this is horrible. And it never, one of the biggest annoying things, it never picks up where you left off, right? It'll jump back 20 minutes into the show. And I just want to go back to what I was watching before. So not the most ideal place to be watching it, but last season I bought the season on Amazon. I paid $20, but I got those episodes coming out every Monday.
Right.
But this time I'm already paying for AMC Plus. So because I was already paying for Shudder, and I'm like, might as well just pay for AMC Plus. It has Shudder on it. And then I regretted it because the interface of this streaming service is terrible.
I've thought about trying out Shudder. I mean, because we mentioned again horror movies earlier. Is that worth a go? I know it's mostly more original horror based stuff.
Definitely, because they have all kinds of horror on it. And I even fell in love with a documentary that I watched on Shudder. It was you have to be a really big film fan to love a 3-hour and 15-minute documentary on folk horror. But
I think I heard about this. What's that called again?
Oh, it's so obnoxiously long and weird title. Yeah, I'm gonna look on my letterbox because it's still relatively high on my 2022 list because I really enjoyed the documentary a lot. It is a little bit further down. Oh, there it is. It is Woodlands Dark and Days Bewitched: A History of Folk Horror.
There it is. Okay. Yeah, I had heard of that one. All right. I'm going to go to your. I'm going to go to your. I'm going to go to your letterbox right now, and I'll just start following you, and then I'll go find it.
There you go. Robert Eggers is a big person they interview in it because he's the new king of folk horror movies. So, but yeah. Besides that, I love Better Call Saul, and I did not think when they spun off Breaking Bad that I cared that much about Saul Goodman, but Jimmy McGill is such a great character. I feel for him so much, and I'm gonna be sad when the show's over, but still got. I think the season's gonna be 13 episodes, so got 11 more after today.
We're getting there. I'm excited to see how they do it, especially since knowing where certain characters are in place already and how the characters who aren't in Breaking Bad are going to show up.
Yeah, exactly. Now, a few more. So what's a film that you love that you think people would be surprised to find out that you love?
I don't know about love, but I have an odd respect for the Barbie princess movies from forever ago because I've seen all of them because my sister's about 4 or 5 years younger than me. And
Okay.
I'm not going to say these are like tremendous movies or tremendous works of cinema. Number one, I hate the word cinema anyway, but in an odd way, though, it was interesting because I had female friends when I was younger who would watch them as well. Then they passed on the movies to my sister,
Mm-hmm.
and they'd always be on TV, and they weren't purely hateable. I mean, I was still like, Mom, can't we just turn on Toy Story? Mom's like, nope, your sister likes it. It's your sister's turn for the TV. Like,
Hey,
that's
Toy
it.
Story has Barbie in it.
It does. And it does have Barbie in it. And it has Bo Peep in it too. But at the same time, I didn't absolutely hate them, and I still kind of cared what happened. So in an odd way, I respect those. I know I
feel
mentioned I don't really like rom-coms. I think in an interesting way, I really like the Set It Up movie from like 2018. It's got Zoe Deutsch and Glenn Powell, I think is his name. That's a really good one. I really enjoy that.
I don't think I've seen that, but I like them both. I'm looking
I
forward to
like them
seeing
both too.
Glenn Powell. I loved Glenn Powell after Everybody Wants Some, and I'm really looking forward to because he's in Top Gun Maverick too, and he just looks like a guy who would be in Top Gun.
Oh, 100%. I'm excited about that too because of Miles Teller. I mentioned earlier, Daniel Kaluuya is, I think, the best working actor currently of the younger generation. Probably the best overall. Miles Teller is my favorite actor, just purely because I think he's not really that good of an actor. I think he's just a dick, and that's all he does in movies. Is he's just a huge dick.
I'm very interested to see that because I had no interest in it, and then I saw the first trailer. I'm like, huh, you have my interest now. And like, this looks like it's legitimately really well shot, and I'm excited about that. I'm excited for what could potentially be some of the best dog fights in a movie, because like based off of some of those shots in the trailer, I'm like, dang, this looks intense.
Yeah, this is the perfect era for the sequel for it to come out, because the way action movies are made nowadays and the technical ways that they can improve the cinematography and the improved special effects, it really opens up for more creative action sequences. And I'm sure people were blown away by the one plane flying upside down over the top of the other one in the 1980s, but I didn't see it the whole way through until probably within the last year or so. And the entire time I was thinking, is this what got Tom Hanks to the A-list? Like, this movie's kind of terrible. Like,
yeah. So
who said this was great?
It's funny because I did an article for Scribe Magazine about Top Gun, and I do a special article series where I talk a lot about how it connects with me. I'm fine with the movie. I love the soundtrack. Like, I had the soundtrack for Top Gun on CD, and now I have it on vinyl, and I listen the hell out of that. But the thing is, it's like, yeah, I watched it, I'm like, this is really cheesy. And like, I don't know if in a good way. But like watching the trailers for the new one, I'm like, this legitimately looks intense and pretty awesome. So I'm excited.
I'm excited about that too. It comes out the same weekend as a wedding that I'm in. So my hope is I can somehow convince like the groom and the best man, be like, hey guys, listen, I know we all like just had a great night out eating food and stuff, but Top Gun just came out. How about we pivot to that and we all just go see Top Gun?
So what's funny is I'm getting married that weekend.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And that's part of my bachelor party.
Great decision.
Me and like 9 of my friends are going to see Top Gun Maverick. So it was supposed to be John Wick Chapter 4.
Right.
Because that was originally supposed to come out. And my brother who's my best man, still thought it was. And he's like, surprise, we're seeing John Wick for your bachelor party. I'm like, it got pushed back a year. He's like, what the F? And I'm like, but Top Gun's coming out.
I mean, if they don't push it back again within the last year, woof. I hope that doesn't happen again. I think
Tom Cruise would murder somebody at this point.
I don't know. I don't understand how. I remember there was a year ago, there was this big story about him cussing out a bunch of people on set of a movie. And one of my favorite podcasts to listen to is, I can't remember off the top of my head. Hang on, I'm going to my podcast section. It's called Higher Learning with Van Lathan and Rachel Lindsay. It's off the Ringer Podcast Network. And Van Lathan was like, I don't understand how anybody took that from Tom Cruise. Like, I understand he's upset, but I'm not going to be talked to like that. And I was thinking the same thing. Like, I'm a pretty non-confrontational person, but if you're going to get in my face and yell at me in front of everybody, I think it might be time that I yell back. So, and it's Tom Cruise. He's 5'0". How did nobody just yell back at him?
I think the thing is because it's Tom Cruise and you want to work again.
That's a fair point.
Because I think he's the kind of person that'll make sure you never work again. That's the thing. I don't know if I want to get on Tom Cruise's bad side because he's crazy.
That's a good point. And he's probably listening to me right now thinking I'm never going to let him be a critic. I'll never let him do anything.
They'll never see his words ever again. But the thing is, like, he freaked out like that because it's like, don't you dare. And it isn't even about public health. It's like, don't you dare get anybody sick with COVID on my set and delay my movie. That's why he freaked out on that.
What was he even shooting? Was that movie? Was that like Mission Impossible 7 or was that weird space movie?
No, it's Mission Impossible.
MI7. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
So he does not want that movie delayed any more than it already is. He's already planning on suing Paramount because they want to do a 45-day release and then on to Paramount Plus. And
that kind of sounds like that's their decision.
Well, I don't know how much pull he has as a producer or not, but he's going to sue them. And just like, well, good for you, Tom Cruise.
So it kind of reminds me of the Black Widow scenario from 2021, where they announced they're putting it straight on Disney Plus the same day as it's coming out in theaters. And Scarlett Johansson's like, hey, that wasn't in our contract. Like, I'm going to sue you guys for this because you owe me a certain percentage of back end. And apparently, like, there'd been the same problem with the HBO Max releases. Yeah. But HBO Max, like, Warner Brothers, like, quietly pulled their stars aside and were like, here's an extra $15 million, please be quiet. And they would say, okay. And then they just move on with their life.
And they're just like Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah. They were moved on.
Money across the table.
Yeah. They just pushed it across and it was no big deal. But like Disney fired back and was like, this is very selfish of Scarlett. We're going to countersue. And as soon as I saw that, at the time, I was handling like legal auto claims where people would get sued. And I immediately thought to myself, Disney has no shot in this. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to pretend that I've gone through law school or anything, but immediately was like, you're in breach of contract. If you told her you're going to give her 20 million and then you're going to give her 1% of the back end revenue, and it's going to go straight to theaters only release. And now you're changing it. You've altered the terms of the deal. You could have amended it, but you have no shot in this case. And then like 2 weeks later, they quietly said, we've settled with her and we're going to do another movie with her later.
Yeah. It's all a bunch of games.
Oh, for sure. 100%.
All a bunch of games. Now, so we just talked about some of the not so great things about movies, but Sam, what do you love most about movies?
I think the experience of actually going to the movies still rings true. I criticized Christopher Nolan a lot when Tenet came out, like mentioned earlier, because he was so upset that people didn't want to go see it in theaters, even though there was this pandemic and he was pushing for it to come out anyway. I think it's a big risk right now, and less so because it seems like the pandemic's calmed down a little bit, but it's still relevant. It's still relevant and prevalent. Trying to mix those words together there, but
saving words.
Yeah, saving words. But I think actually going to the movies is a great experience. Being around a bunch of other people and experiencing the same story is tremendous. It can be very moving. It can be just a great memory and a great time. I still remember going to see the original Avengers come out at midnight, and I think the first midnight showing I saw was The Hunger Games, and that movie is still terrific in my mind. And then just the ongoing memories. It's not the greatest movie ever, but there's a great line in Mank where one of the characters, I forget who he's I forget who the real life person is, says, we are the only industry where someone gives you money and essentially they leave with nothing but a memory. And to be able to get people to give you money and still essentially give them nothing is a pretty impressive, it's a pretty impressive market, and it's a pretty impressive business that they can continue to do that. And that's why I'll keep going back to the theater, because of great experiences. And I'm excited that more stuff is starting to come out again.
Yeah. Like, I feel like this coming weekend, as we're recording, there's 3 major releases this weekend.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm very lucky. I got to see 2 of them already. It was the 2 that I really wanted to see too. I will be seeing The Bad Guys this weekend. But it's a special thing going back to the theater. And like, trust me, I have a whole entire story from my experience going to see the midnight premiere of The Avengers back in 2012. And I remember so many details about it because it was such a weird experience. Because back in the day when we actually had to go early and get seats instead of reserving them now, we showed up to the theater like 2 hours beforehand. And we stood in line. And
I remember doing that at the Hunger Games premiere too, showing up at like 10 p.m. and the line's out the door already. And they basically just gave you a ticket and said, find a seat. The whole movie theater is only showing Hunger Games, except for apparently one screening was still showing like a 10:30 showing of 21 Jump Street, which was hilarious to walk into by accident.
But Sam, this was great. That was my last question for you. But how I always like to wrap up my show is I let my guests ask me a question. So, Sam, what would you like to ask the Wasteland Reviewer?
All right, Wasteland Reviewer, I got you. What was the worst movie you ever took your fiance to see in a theater, or ever said this is going to be great and it turned out to be really bad?
It's interesting because my fiance just has a lot higher standards than me. Like a lot higher. Like it's really hard to please her. And I'm trying to think of because like I literally see anything because when I've taken her to see some stinkers. I'm even trying to think of, because like there's been a few that so I remember I'm a huge science fiction fan, and so is my very good friend Haley, and it was her birthday, and Jess and I went to go see Chappie with Haley. And after like District 9 and even Elysium, I was still pretty excited. And then Jess was so angry leaving that theater. And like I legitimately was really mad. Like I got to the point where it's like I was rooting for Hugh Jackman in it. I'm like, and he's obviously the bad guy in this movie. And I did not hear the end of it the whole entire day on how much she hated Chappie. So that's probably one of the most memorable ones. Because like I definitely don't think this is a bad movie, but like I remember taking Jess to go. She was part of the group of people that I went to go see Age of Ultron with, and she hated it. Like hated it. And I would not like it upset me because we went to go see Fury Road the next week, and still all she wanted to do was shit talk Age of Ultron after Fury Road. I'm just sitting here like, I just had a life-changing experience. I want to talk about this. But yeah, Chappie would probably be the one that I remember the most like volatile reaction to.
I actually kind of had a similar reaction, or she still gets mad at me when I talk about this, but Jane, my wife, we went and saw The Green Knight in theaters last summer, and I'm a little down on it, but I still think it's technically very impressive. I just think the story and some of the acting isn't all that it needs to be, or it's overhyped or overstuffed. It's not bad in my opinion, but I wouldn't recommend like an hour. Like I wouldn't recommend the 2.5 hours it takes, but as soon as we, not even as soon as we left, before while we're still in it, Jane looks at me and she says, "How long have we been in this theater?" And I said, about an hour. She's like, "How long is this?" I was like, 2.5. She's like, "I'm so mad at you right now. I can't believe we're still in this." And even since then, she's she still brings it up. It's like, I can't believe you brought me to that. I tease her because one of the other bad ones was Serenity, the Matthew McConaughey and Hathaway movie, which is so much fun to watch because of how awful it is. But at the same time, she was still like, why did you intentionally take me to this? You knew it was going to be bad and you still took me. I was like, yeah, that's the fun of it. If you know it's going to be terrible.
Oh, I thought I was having a dream. I thought I was dreaming, legitimately. I thought I fell asleep in the theater and was dreaming up that movie, and then realizing, like, no, this isn't a dream. This is actually happening. And I'm like, what the hell is this movie?
Oh, 100%. I like kind of read about the big spoiler for 3 years later and one of the worst movies ever made. But I can't believe, like, at the very end, they're like, oh, he hasn't never met his son in real life. And that's because he's not in real life. He's a video game character. And my mind went 1,000 different places. Like, they can't have really put this in and thought it was going to go well. Like, they can't have done this. This is ridiculous. Who gave this the green light? There are Oscar winners everywhere in this. There's no way they okayed all of this. And then I realized Matthew McConaughey was probably drunk on a private island. Yeah.
It like wrote Peaky Blinders and stuff. It's like,
yeah,
what's going on here? I think that was the same January too. That it might not have been, but like Replicants or whatever.
Yeah, is that the one with that's the one with Keanu Reeves, right?
Yep.
Still haven't seen it, but now I want to, because I remember it being like, oh, this could be interesting. No.
Oh, I went with my friend Joe, and we had such a blast watching that movie. I've seen some turds with him. I saw that and the new Predator movie with him. And I remember just sitting, like, especially Replicants, I'm just like, what is this movie? And who thought Keanu Reeves could be a scientist?
It's just so outside his range. Like,
no, it's so bad. And it's like The Happening, where Mark Wahlberg plays a high school science teacher. It's just like, I can't believe this. This does not make sense to me.
Yeah, there's some people who you could see legitimately could play any kind of character, any kind of occupant of a job or any kind of worker, but there's just a line where it's, yeah, Mark Wahlberg's too handsome and too muscular to be your high school science teacher. Yes, there are handsome science teachers, but not Mark Wahlberg handsome. Come on, like, guys.
You got to leave Mark Wahlberg for soldiers, blue collar workers, or cops. That's his wheelhouse.
Yeah. Or priests like Father Stu.
Well, that's the thing. He started off as a boxer. That made 100% sense. Like,
oh yeah, he looks great.
Stu, I'm just like, are Mark Wahlberg and Mel Gibson actually father and son? Because, like, just listening to two of them go back and forth with each other, I'm like, this seems real. Like, they don't even seem to be acting at this point.
Yeah, I didn't think that there was any real acting that happened.
It's funny because I did see that with Jess, and she turned to me and she's like, do you think they had any dialogue for Mel Gibson, or do you think this is just him talking?
I would put a certain percentage of money of my current salary that he was just walking, and that percent that he was just talking, excuse me, that would be 100%. It gets all of it.
Yeah. Oh, but that was a good question. Trust me, in my time, I have seen some terrible movies in theaters, and unfortunately, I've dragged my fiance to some of them too.
I try not to drag my wife to the terrible ones, but I do remember, and then I'll let you end it. But I remember when Cats came out in 2019, we were still engaged, but I remember it was so unique that Universal just wouldn't move the release date. I saw it and I was like, this is the same day as Star Wars 9. You guys are going to get smashed. It's not even going to be close. And then everybody saw the movie, and maybe, I don't know if anybody's ever publicly put forth this theory. So if they haven't, I'm claiming it now as the Sam Nichols Cats theory. But I think they knew it was going to be terrible. They saw the release date and they said, screw it, put it the same day as Star Wars. Maybe it'll bury it and no one will remember. And it kind of worked for about 3 weeks.
Oh. I took my mom. I could have a whole list of bad experience taking my mom to the movies, and that was one of them.
I saw it by myself at like 9 a.m, and I feel a little bit of shame when I go on my phone when I'm in a movie. Not that one. I was like, I don't care. Going on my phone. We'll play Angry Birds.
Rather, why I'm gonna go home and go watch Angry Birds movie instead of watching Cats. Oh my god, yeah, Cats was something. I'm convinced that I love the like the internet does some crazy things. And I'm like, I've seen people being like, COVID happened because it was God's punishment for us making cats.
I mean, there's a fair argument to be made there.
Like, oh no.
I think that's a fair argument to be made. We make cats. God says that's it. Here you go.
100% Cats' fault. But on that note, Sam, this is a lot of fun. I appreciate you coming on. I'm going to let you, if you'd like to shamelessly plug one last time, any social media or anything you have come up for SiftPop, go right ahead.
Thanks. SiftPop, again, just had my review for Father Stew come out in May. I'll put out my review of Winning Time, the documentary. No, not documentary. That'd be funny if it was. But the drama series about the 1980s Los Angeles Lakers. My SiftPop not SiftPop. My Letterbox username is CinematicSam623. And I would like to shamelessly plug everybody go watch Lindsay Ellis's video about Cats, because it's the funniest thing ever, because she goes into an hour about how that movie is awful. So since we talked about it, I'll bring it up. So go watch that. It's hilarious.
There you go. But Sam, thank you so much for coming on. And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.